gonna go ahead and get started.
Wayne's your hand just a second. He's outside.
Who is?
Wayne Williams.
Oh,
He's signing the paperwork for the guys who's in the committee.
while we're waiting on Wayne, we all got these with us. Put them on silent so they ring on there through the meeting. And while we're waiting on Wayne, this is Jack Garvey. He's the attorney that's initiating this, we're going to call it a lawsuit or against the drug companies for all the overdoses and all the overprescribing that's been taking place. So, comes a couple more. Wayne, can you come up here and sit, please? You're fine. You have to answer some questions. Since we do have some faces we don't all recognize, we're going to go around the room, introductions. My name is Gary Nelson, Presiding Commissioner.
Wayne Williams, Assistant Prosecuting Attorney.
Michelle Getzmeyer, Deputy County Clerk.
Joe Gettinger, St. John County Commission.
Randy Barr, St. John County Commission.
Gary Souls for sure.
Eric Bowser, Coroner.
Tom Kine, CEO, St. Genevieve County Memorial Hospital.
Herschel Parker, Director of Quality and Risk Management at St. Genevieve County Memorial Hospital.
Kendall Schrum, St. Genevieve County Ambulance.
Sandra Bell, St. Genevieve County Health Department.
Eric Bennett, St. Genevieve Police Department.
Susan Wade, Mental Health Board.
Paul Ashford, Mayor of St.
Felix Meyer, Emergency Management Director.
James Baxter,
Brad Arnold, St. Genevieve County Communities.
Scott Schrum, Father Schrum Law.
Jack Barbie from the law firm of Carey, Donnie and Law.
Okay, a little background. Jack has asked us, his firm, to join in a class action lawsuit, and three of us didn't feel like it should be our decision, that it should be a kind of a county entity, city, county, hospital, ambulance, everybody should be involved in making the decision. So in order to educate you, and instead of me trying to stumble through this, I thought we'd have Jack and his co-counsel from St. Francis County to kind of explain to you what he wants us to do here.
Thank you, Commissioner. Let me first start off with a couple of things. I want to talk about right now the lawsuit itself, who the parties are, who the plaintiffs are, and then who the defendants are, and then fall back on the two theories of liability that I've already talked about with Michelle and the three commissioners at our initial meeting. My name is Jack Garvey. I am a lawyer from the law firm of Carey, Donnie and Lowe, a law firm that specializes in bringing lawsuits against pharmaceutical companies and medical device companies. It's a very experienced law firm, both in federal and state court practice. My background before joining this law firm 3 years ago was I was a circuit court judge in the city of St. Louis for 18 years. I was the chief criminal judge, the chief juvenile judge. And it was during that time that we began to see an uptake in illegal opioid possession and heroin possession, a few of which were coming from this county. Now, I'll stop the story there and just talk first about the lawsuit. Presently, we represent Jefferson, Perry County, Iron County, Crawford County, Washington, Cape Girardeau County, Greene, Jasper, Stone, Taney, and the city of Joplin in a lawsuit against the manufacturers, distributors, pharmacies, and prescription benefit managers involved in the opioid, what we call the epidemic. The lawsuit is not against doctors nor hospitals. The lawsuit is against those that we feel we have enough proof to show that, number one, they misled doctors and the public about the efficacy, safety, and addiction qualities of opioids. And number two, the rest of the defendants then violated state and federal law in failing to report the immersion or flooding of certain towns and counties with opioids. And let me just back up. What does all this mean? This means that because of this epidemic, each of you are involved with citizens that are having exposure to the system because of their opioid addiction and moving on to a heroin addiction. And what do I mean by exposure? That a user or abuser or an addict is having exposure to your law enforcement apparatus, your mental health, hospitals, EMT, health department, juvenile department, and eventually for the unlucky ones, the coroner. That is the basis of the damages. And I'll back up even further, and the commissioners have heard this part of the spiel. The basis of the liability, and everything that I'll tell you now, is that we are able to prove this through documents, emails, that have been developed by the defendants over the years. Purdue Pharmaceuticals started this in the late 90s when they invented a drug called OxyContin. OxyContin was supposed to be a 12-hour pain relief opioid-based medicine. It was not. It lasted about 6 to 8 hours. The drug was meant for cancer and post-surgical pain. That's what is on the label. But what Purdue Pharmaceutical did was aggressively market the drug to go after the chronic pain market through the use of general practitioners. They went after the GPs. So that meant when you came in with your sore elbow, the sales reps, marketing articles, use of key opinion leaders, and bogus front groups had it in the head of the doctors that it was okay to dispense opioids and prescribe them to treat chronic pain. It was not. What the sales reps and all the articles, the bogus articles, were telling the doctors was the drug was non-addictive, that actually the patient thought that they were addicted. It was called pseudo-addiction. That's what they made up. That the drug lasted 12 hours. It didn't. That you can function as a normal human being. You can't when you're under the influence of these drugs. That there was no withdrawal symptoms, and that it was a painless withdrawal if you did go through withdrawal. That's what they told the doctors beginning in the late 90s. What you saw then is an explosion of the sale of painkillers and also the explosion in overdose death beginning from the late 90s. In 2007, Purdue Pharmaceutical got caught by the federal government and pled guilty and paid a fine of $600 million. From 2007 until the present time, other opioid manufacturers who were included in our lawsuit continued to falsely market the drug and literally push it onto the population in order to drive their sales. And their sales were driven. These companies made billions of dollars based upon the sale of opium, Percocet, all of those other opioids that we know about. How do we know this? Because these companies then entered into agreements to set up what we call front groups, groups with the names like the American Pain Management Association, the Geriatric Association, veterans groups that were addicted to eradicating pain. These groups were paid for. Over 12 groups were paid for by the pharmaceutical companies to market and push out the idea that pain pill prescriptions were okay and to ignore all the science in the labels. We know this because we have the proof of this. There have been congressional hearings that were attempted to be done on this. One example, the American Pain Society, the Committee on Homeland Security wrote a letter notifying them that they were under investigation and would they please show up to testify as to their activity. 2 days later, they wrote back and said, we have dissolved ourselves. We will not be showing up to any congressional hearing. There are several groups like this. They also used doctors that were on their payroll that they did not reveal were on the payroll. This created more demand for pain pills beginning from 2007, literally right up until now. We would have experts to testify to that. That's the first level of liability. That's for the manufacturers of the opioids. The second level of liability goes to the distributors, the pharmacies, and the prescription benefit managers. This level of liability is based upon the violation of state and federal law, meaning these companies have to report suspicious activities when they are dispensing opioids. A suspicious activity is defined as an overabundance of pills going to a geographic area that has either never had this number before or it's just out of the ordinary. The companies that are involved in this are Cardinal, McKesson, Mallinckrodt. All three of those companies have pled guilty in the last year for violating either state or federal law in other states. Mallinckrodt paid a fine of $35 million last summer. We believe that they did the same here in Missouri and to St. Genevieve County. The final level of liability goes to the pharmacies and the prescription benefit managers. The pharmacies have the same duty as those distributors do to report suspicious orders. None of them did. The two defendants that we have brought in are Walgreens and CVS. And then the prescription benefit managers. There is now evidence emerging that they were aware. This would include Express Scripts, United Healthcare, and Opioid. That they were also managing prescriptions, sending prescriptions out at a high number, but never calling the Missouri Pharmacy Board or the DEA reporting these suspicious orders. And that's the last level of liability. So why are you all today here? I think because the commissioners felt because it was your departments that were bearing the cost of this epidemic. The four areas that we have identified are law enforcement, juvenile, health, and the coroner's office, plus EMT or any type of ambulance districts in the counties. It is you who have not, if you have not seen an outright increase in your budgets because of opioids and heroin, will have evidence that 4 out of 5 opioid users swing over to heroin. What is happening is you're bearing those costs. You are paying those costs for these addicts, these people that are exposed. In the counties that we're representing, what that means is we have retained experts and data collection company that we begin by first going back 10 years to look at all the budgets, and then I would be talking to the department heads like you to see how the opioid crisis has affected your department. For example, the sheriff and I talked about for every overdose cost, which you're now increasing your overdose costs. How many sheriffs are at that scene? What is the sheriff doing there? Is there more time committed because the sheriff is taking a child out of custody because of an overdose? How much is the sheriff's time worth? The sheriff could be doing something else other than answering that opioid call. Search warrants on opioid or heroin, investigations involved. The juvenile department, how many children are being taken out of custody because of the opioids? How much does that cost the department for legal fees, for court costs, for time devoted by the deputy juvenile officer and the attorneys? The coroner, it's obvious the cost of a medical exam due to an opioid step. You go through each department like that. Health department, how much is being devoted to education, preventive, how much in treatment at all is your department spending on treatment? And then the EMT people, what are the costs, your Narcan costs, your cost per call, how many calls are you doing on overdoses? It would be all broken down into that way, and then we would come up with the damage amount overall for the county, and that would be part of the lawsuit. The lawsuit has been filed in state court in the city of St. Louis already on August 1st. Our theory is to have a state court instead of in federal court right now. It was removed to federal court. We believe that it will be sent back to state court within the next couple of months. That is what I have to say. Does anyone have any questions?
How will this affect our local pharmacies? Not CVS, just our local pharmacies.
We won't be bringing them in. No, and none of the local pharmacies in any of the counties will be bought.
So, I guess my question is, why are we looking at the manufacturers of such when my fear is to go after, that it will turn into going after the physicians, because the physicians had to write the scripts, and you could argue the same case that they should have been aware that the patient was exceeding and they were addicted to it, and they should have been able to recognize it also, even though the manufacturers misled them or oversold their product. I don't want to see it turn into a attack on the medical care providers. So how do we assure that that's not going to turn into something onto the medical care provider side?
There's a couple of things about that. There have been several lawsuits filed. There are 1,000 cases pending in federal court in Cleveland, and then broken down in other state court actions like ours in a lot of states. The manufacturers have not turned around and sued one doctor yet. They have not brought them in, number one. Number two, we don't anticipate bringing in any doctors, except we have sued one pill mill that we feel consciously or intentionally prescribe an overabundance of pills. But for the normal GP, the position is that they were misled, that they were lied to by the companies. Now, the companies may say, well, it's the doctor's fault, but we don't anticipate them bringing in the doctors into the lawsuit for the simple reason, if you think about it, it's a business decision. Who are the drug company's biggest customers? Who gets their product to the customer? Doctors. We don't anticipate them bringing the doctors in. Because if they want to go down that road then, if they want to go down that road of it's the doctor's fault, then they have left the door wide open as to what did the doctors know and what were the doctors being told. And the evidence is just overwhelming from what we're learning in the cases already filed and from the congressional investigations.
Okay.
It's unbelievable.
And then I guess my second question to follow that up is Mellencrot, you mentioned them as one of the
Yes.
the people. I was under the impression that Mellencrot they, for lack of a better term, cook down the opiates to a raw form, then they sell that in a concentrated form to other pill manufacturers. Does Mellencrot actually make a finished product that is sold to the consumer? It is sold to other products. Am I mistaking there? Because Mellencrot's a St. Louis-based company, or one of their plants is in St. Louis, and I just know some facts from there because I know people that worked up there at times. And I was always under the impression that they are a product supply, not a finished product medication company.
They are both.
Okay, they are both.
The lawsuit has listed out, Mallinckrodt manufactured about 6 different versions of opioids. We believe like at least 4 of them were out of the factory in North St. Louis. Roxycodone, under those names. Now they manufacture them under one name and then will probably distribute to another company to distribute under their name.
Yeah.
But they're the manufacturer. What they were caught on in Florida for the violation of the federal and state law under what they call the diversion theory, that second liability, was for their drug that is simply, it has a big M on it. It's a blue pill M. For example, about 2 years ago, Mallinckrodt supplied 66% of the opioids to the state of Florida.
Mm-hmm.
So that meant if you took all of their different labels that they were making it under and put it under one, they were supplying 66%. They sent 1 million pills to a town of 400 with one doctor in Florida. We think they did the same.
Okay, so they probably have, that's probably the parent company, and then they're manufacturing the end product under some of their other brands or other things, is what you're saying. Okay.
Brands, yes. Same company, Mallinckrodt, yes.
Okay, that makes sense, because I know in St. Louis, a lot of it was the actual production. They would take the raw opiate and cook it down and make the concentrated version of it, and then they would ship that to other companies, and that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay. I was just wondering how that was tied to there.
I got a question. You know, there's a lot of victims in this lawsuit apparently, but I'm not going to speak on the government level, but on the level of helping victims that are on the street that are stuck on this crap and can get no help because they've lost everything, they have no health care, and they're not getting support. Is any of this money going to filter down to the poor guy on the street, or is it just going to stop at the government level, and that everybody that's been burdened by this disease, this addiction, they'll be taken care of, but what about the guy on the street?
The second level of liability in this lawsuit is a nuisance claim, where you're asking for money to be paid for the future. It's the example I gave. It's like these companies started a fire in the middle of the town square of toxic waste and then walked away and said it's your problem. So the idea is we're asking for the last 10 years what the county has spent trying to fix this problem, but we're also asking for the next 5 years for example, health education, for money for the county to provide treatment, education, to try to, they've created a whole new generation of addicts, people that were never intended to be addicts.
I'm in total agreement with that, and I
And
just
so-
wanna make sure that because that's the problem, we can't get, the rich can't get richer and the poor just get poor. It's the person on the street that if I'm gonna support a lawsuit, I wanna make sure that the money's just not gonna stop up here, but it's gonna filter down to, and I understand, and working with the health department, working with the community hospital, working with the hospital, trying to get these people help is hard because they have no insurance and they can get a little bit of treatment and then boom, they're right back and turned away. So, that's just one of my concerns, that's all. And I agree with everything you said because it is, it's been just a money-making gimmick and it's gotta stop.
I hear this in every county, and it's a concern, but the idea is to put out a theory out there, and then it's going to be up to the commissioners if there is anything at the end of this.
You said in another meeting that how many years down the road you think this is? How long are you looking at? Many, many years, how many?
That's a great question. These mass tort cases they take, I could see anywhere from 1.5 years to 3 years for this to be done. Now, there are 2 tracks going on here. There's the federal court action in Cleveland, and that judge is very aggressive. He has already set the first case for trial. The city of Cleveland and Cuyahoga County are the plaintiffs against practically everyone that I've listed. And that trial starts March 19th. He has set up a settlement committee also. Plus, you have the state court actions that we're a part of. And the state courts, we're going to ask for a quick trial date and for all the counties to be tried together. So putting all that together, there's a difference between if there's going to be a verdict and then appeals or if there's a settlement. If there's a settlement, then you have to go through the allocation process, which can take another year. Because then a special master or a judge will have to determine what each of the counties is entitled to, depending on the amount that's been made available by the companies. So there's a couple different ways to go to add to the length of this case.
Assuming this lawsuit goes through, we get on board, what do you need from each of the departments? What do we have to supply?
Well, you have to supply as first, I start out with the auditor and I ask for the last 10 years of budget in PDF form if that's possible, or the treasurer, whoever is in charge of keeping essentially the audit. We have an economics expert that goes through that, notices anomalies in that. And I will come back, it'll be me, and I will come back to each, the whole room really, each one of you, and say, and I have a protocol, a checklist that I go through. And I say, all right, so on your overdoses, how many people are assigned to this supervisory time? We just kind of break out the costs out. You're the coroner, right? You're kind of easy because there's a set number for an autopsy. There will probably be some type of algorithm for how many you could be doing in the future based upon prescription rate, death rate of the county already projecting into the future. But the coroner will be, how many have you done in the last 10 years related to opioids or heroin or fentanyl or morphine, and then we take that number. For others, it will be a couple visits where I come back and forth, and we're getting better at it because we're just developing the model now with Jefferson County. But that's what I need. I will need access to the department head, or what department heads have done is say, talk to this person. They know our budget better. They know the operation of this department better than anyone. And that's who I end up talking to. That's what I need. Thank you for asking that question. A lot of counties are like, we don't want to ever see you again. But it's going to take a little bit of work.
Any other questions? The counties that you mentioned, are they already signed up? Are
Yes, they voted, their
So
county
one, two.
commissioners voted, signed the retention agreement, and now beginning the process of going back to them to begin to extract information. So Jefferson County moves on to Cape County, and yes. There's about 6 more out there that are deciding.
Do you see people in this room getting deposed over this?
I can anticipate department heads getting deposed. What the sheriff means is, if I'm using you as a source of information, I will have to tell the other side. They're gonna say, where did you get these numbers from, or something like that, and I'm gonna have to say, well, the sheriff, or something like that, and they may or may not wanna take that position, chances are they will. But I see it limited to the department head. They can probably take whoever they want.
What's the cost for the county to retain or, obviously there's gotta be some type of cost for you guys doing your preliminary work. Is the county,
I think Wayne will go with that. He's got,
okay,
We anticipate about $2 to $3 million. We like St. Genevieve to write a check for that amount by the end.
$7 again.
We anticipate the cost between about $2 to $4 million for this lawsuit. Most of that will be spent on experts. We are not looking to the counties to pay any advanced or upfront cost or write a check for anything. If we are successful, we will ask the counties out. It'll be on a pro rata share. The way I could see this happening, either at trial or in a settlement, it'll be a formula. It'll take the population of the county, your death rate, this county is going up, your emergency room visits, your prescription rate, your actual cost, and putting any other number that's relevant into a formula and coming up with some type of amount. And on the other side of that is how much are the companies willing to pay. Some will want to pay nothing, others will want to put in something and then just get away from this. We will look to the counties from that settlement amount to pay their share of the cost.
Anybody else? Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
Paul, I'd like to thank you for your comments. I know you spend a lot of your personal life trying to help people get off drugs, and you need to be commended for that. And like the sheriff and the chief of police, the amount of arrests you make drug related is probably 50% or better than a lot of your arrests. I know yours. So there's a lot of stuff that the average public don't see that cost in all this with the addiction. We asked Wayne Williams, the prosecutor elect, to go over the paperwork. And Wayne, you want to discuss what you've done?
I guess this is like a contingent fee agreement, the retention to retain the law firm to represent the county. I would start out with a disclaimer that I'm not a civil attorney. I've never practiced law civilly, never sued anyone. My whole career has been in the area of criminal law. So, from that point of view, this is not rocket science. It's pretty simple. I do have a question about some of the aspects of this, but the basic bottom line is this going to cost the county any money? Well, there's two provisions in the retention letter that says there's no fee if there's no recovery. That's attorney fees. There's no attorney fees, and there's no litigation, reimbursement of litigation expenses unless there is a recovery. But the letter does distinguish between two types of recoveries. There's a monetary recovery, dollars, and there's an equitable recovery. And I'm not sure what the equitable recovery is because I've never practiced in that side of the law. But I'm sure that you could probably comment on that.
The equitable recovery will be, some of the companies may say, we don't want to pay any damages for the future, but we will pay for prescription drug return barrels outside of every pharmacy. And we will pay for that cost. Or we will fund a healthcare education program at the health department for the next 5 years. That would be an equitable relief, where they have put it there, and instead of putting it down.
Did a little research into this. There's a national trend of these lawsuits. You see them happening at the Attorney General level because the Attorney General takes more of an oversight position on these types of suits. But currently in Missouri, I think there's 3 lawsuits pending against distributors of opioids currently. And I think they told me last week there were like 12 investigations pending into other distributors. So they're You know, that's the Attorney General's office. They don't necessarily represent the best interest of St. Genevieve County. They're looking at it at a state level. That office, in my opinion, is a little bit more political, and, you know, in respect to, you know, the long-term view of that office. You know, you've got the Attorney General, he's got his eye on other things, things like that. I'm not saying anything bad about our Attorney General, don't even know the man, but I'm saying that this is kind of a political issue when you get to that state level. There is some oversight. The Attorney General has kind of control of the steering wheel a little bit more than you do with at the county level. But the trend across the country is a lot of municipalities and counties are jumping in on these lawsuits. It's all across the United States. They're doing that. The critics would say that's gumming up the process for sort of a global resolution that the Attorney Generals might make. But I don't see that necessarily personally. I think that, you know, the county is obligated, really, the officials are obligated to protect the county and go after these folks, that type of thing. So I don't see any downside to the firm representing us. You know, I think I called you on the phone the other day and asked you, well, if there is a recovery and the litigation expenses outstrip the type of recovery, because this was a stupid question on my part because I've never practiced this type of law, would the county owe anything? And I think you told me that it would not. I mean, there's no financial responsibility for the county if there's no recovery at all. And I think the county has the final say, does it not, on whether we accept a settlement or something like that, so.
Yeah, what will happen is if there is an offer made, because you would be my client, I would come back, either communicate that by phone or come to a meeting and inform the commissioners what the demand is, what we think we can count, whatever it is, and then a decision would be made, because you are the client. Yes?
And this is the point person in the detention letter for the firm. So there is an ethical requirement that the firm keeps us reasonably advised of the progress of the lawsuit. So, you know, you're not going to see him today and then not ever see him again. During the process of the lawsuit, you know, the firm is going to keep the county advised of the progress of the suit and the status of the suit, where we are and where we're going. And I think that is an ethical responsibility for, you know, there's ethics, rules of ethics for attorneys on that.
What I have done with there is usually I use the county clerk as the contact person with the commissioners, and I will monthly or every 6 weeks just email or even call and say, would you please tell the commissioners this is what's going on, or we're doing this or something like that, and then it's their decision how they want to disseminate that to the departments. But that's how I've been doing it, and frankly, I've been back into the counties after being retained, and I'll just stop by anyway, just tell them what's going on. So, and it will be me.
Another aspect of it is, even if we don't have a recovery, let's say we break even, or there's a minimal recovery. If we accomplish, you know, some deterrence here from the companies, these big opioid distributors, from doing what they're doing, that's got to help us in the long run, I would think. I mean, common sensibly looking at it.
I would hope so.
You would hope so. And that could be,
If that's not gonna do it, then,
if that's not going to
the
do it.
rich are gonna get rich, that's all that's gonna happen.
That is correct.
And that's my whole point on it, is this gonna help, is this gonna, and I know that you can't answer that question, but is this gonna, it's surely gotta deter, it's surely gotta make them at least think, and everybody think that, hey, people are serious about that, so I get that.
And it's a national trend. I mean, they're getting sued across the United States like crazy. I see that. And I think it's going to get bigger and bigger. That these suits are going to become more prevalent as time goes forward. Anybody have any questions?
Anybody got anything for Wayne? You heard Jack say several times about the county commissioners. I don't feel this is a three-person decision to be made. I think all the entities involved, you're all losing money on this. And I think it involves all of us, so I'd like to know what you all think after Jack and Wayne are done. My feeling is to do nothing and just let the other guy take care of it, but not really get things done. But if you have any questions for Jack, you want to sit around and talk about it after Jack leaves, it's up to you guys. But we need direction in what you entities want to do. Anybody?
I think for the best interest of the county, we should move ahead with the lawsuit as long as we all agree that there should be some provision to help those on the ground level that really need some of the funding to go to help them with the resources that are currently not available.
You know, I think
If
you're
it's,
right.
if it's available, and I understand a lawsuit's gonna, you can go to court and they might say, well, you got nothing, this is, no, you're.
I
you're
understand
online.
that.
But I would feel good about that, because like I said, I've got some concerns that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And the people that are the victims are the ones that are down here in the weeds, that are suffering, that can't get the help they need. So that's the only way I'd be, and I know as the mayor, speaking as the mayor, this has cost our police department, his time, his people. Every time when his guys go, our county guys go, the fire department goes, so it is an expense, you know, and so I get that.
It is an expense, and when we say it's at no cost to the counties, it will be. You'll have paperwork, you'll have
Sure.
clerks working on getting information,
Right.
but it won't be no expense to Jack. So,
Let me ask you, ma'am, for the health department, are you involved in treatment at all, or you just refer them?
We currently do programs in the community, do programs in the school. Most of what I'm doing, I've received grant money to fund. So,
Okay.
but I have a passionate interest in helping in this community. And I think by joining the lawsuit, we send a message to the citizens and to the state that we're not taking the city down. We're going to take every avenue we can. We were one of the first counties to join the prescription drug monitoring program. And I think all the efforts that we do as a group are working to help send a united message that we're really trying to work on this.
Part of the damages would be money to fund your staffing for the PDM, because a time's gonna come where you're gonna have to do it on
Correct.
your own.
Correct.
You know, and then Jefferson County is talking about that now. They think it's gonna take 3 or 4 people to staff their PDM monitoring, which has been very effective.
And it's crystal clear that this is not gonna cost the people of this county, this lawsuit's not gonna cost them anything.
No, it's not. Our law firm has the wherewithal, the resources to fund this on our own, to advance the money. If we lose this and more of these companies run out of money, which could be with everyone soon, that could be possible, I will not be back here asking for St. Genevieve to write a check.
Can you put that in writing?
I think it's in there 2 times. Wayne worked me over. He took out.
Well, good. I hope so. I hope you're looking out for this county.
And
And
you said-
commissioners, and
shook me
I
down now.
do trust their judgment on this. I am thankful that they had this meeting, so we would have some say-so in this. And I feel a whole lot better about it than when I first heard about it. So I applaud you guys and gals for taking care of this and getting this out and making it public so everybody sees what's going on. But it is an expense, and it is.
Here's the thing, I mean, I come down from St. Louis, you guys don't know me from Adam, you know, and you don't know that we're out there on this. The only other model for this was tobacco litigation, and for the treatment of people in the future, that was disastrous with the states being involved. And frankly, that's why the counties are getting involved, because they saw what the state attorneys general did to the counties, where none of that money in the settlement reached the counties for anything. So that's what's going on. This could be, this may be nothing, but this also could be something. Everything's a risk. Minimalization of the risk.
And I've seen for the record, Sandy and I have been in some meetings where we know we have a problem, that we've been in meetings with the hospital, they're working after it, they're aggressively fighting this problem, and I appreciate that, so I agree with that.
Sandra's the one that brought this to us and said, we need to get on board with this. So, and that's why we made contact with Jack and we made contact with all you guys. And if anybody don't have anything to do tonight, when they get home, they want to read this, they can take it with them.
You need to fall asleep.
How far back do you go?
We're going back 10 years. We can get around the statute of limitations because our position is, and it's law in Missouri, that they purposely misled the public. So normally at a statute of limitations, it's more limited, but because they misled us, we can go back further.
It's gonna be 10 years.
As far back as you can go, it's not fatal that you can't go back 10 years. But we need as far back to go so we can project also.
And will that give you an idea of how much we could receive from the lawsuit?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
you don't have any projections right now?
No, and I wouldn't want to make any right now because I just don't have any idea. county is different.
And is it in the county, do we have, I mean, if we receive money? Where's it go, what do we do? We have any plans for that?
So, you just, go ahead.
I think programs are gonna have to be the biggest part of this thing because you've got people on drugs. They're not just gonna come off, they're gonna find another drug. You gotta get programmed somehow to turn this thing around. I think that's the biggest part of any money we get back.
And we're not doing this as a revenue, we're just doing it to put a stop to the problem, or slow it down as much as we can.
That's the key to it. You're not gonna stop it. We can slow it down and do our part. At least we're actively and aggressively going after something or somebody, someone to do something. And that's what I like about it, because there's gonna be some records come out of this, and for forever, or for whatever reason, I know HIPAA laws, but this town has been in denial that there's a drug problem. And we got one. It's here. It's right now. And we just gotta address it and go forward, and fight. This is just another tool to fight.
And Joe, I agree. If you fix the opiate problem,
They're just
it's going to be
gonna find
another,
Yes.
so we have to be progressive and go forward. How can we get education and prevention and get people fixed instead of ignoring the other problems? This is the first step. It's not gonna be, this is one step for one particular drug. We're gonna have other drugs that are gonna pop up that are synthetic drugs, that are modifications on current drugs that they have, and it's going to be, so if the county moves forward, I would think that we would want to put a lot of that toward education, prevention, not just of the opiate problem. And I know that's going to be very hard to cross that bridge, because if the money's coming from an opiate-based problem, but we need to have just drug awareness programs that can cover that plus others, because it's not going to go away. Fixing the opiate problem is not going to fix the drug problem in the community.
This problem is generational.
Yes.
And we gotta change the generation. And that's why we've been working at, we gotta get into the schools. We gotta start working with the kids to change the generation. It's a generation. All our problems in this community is generational. And we gotta, somewhere along the line, that's gotta be broken. We gotta break the cycle.
And I agree with Paul and Joe both. If there would be a cash settlement, and I doubt there would be after everything is done, but dedicate that money, long-term education programs to get people back on the straight line, whatever it takes to make them a useful citizen.
I think we need suggestions from the experts that deal with this every day as time goes on, because I couldn't give you an idea of what we need to do. I know we need to do it, but I can't tell you what we need to do.
It's been interesting in getting this case ready. I talked to a treatment expert at Washington University, and I said, in developing the model for treatment, what would be the best treatment? And he said an interesting thing. The best treatment is what the doctors do. When the doctors find out they have an opioid-dependent doctor, they whisk him away or her away, and they are inpatient for 90 days. They are off the grid 90 days, and then intensive outpatient treatment every day afterwards. See, you would want to start thinking about the Cadillac or Mercedes-Benz of treatment programs. The jail is going to need treatment programs. The sheriff is going to need money to fund those in withdrawal that he's taking into custody. I mean, it's just not a treatment. It's also an addiction problem, education, preventive care. I mean, there's ways that this can be done in a county like yours. But let me just say, I know I'm here pitching something like the Music Man. I know I'm on camera. But I've been to 28 counties. This is the first time that I've done this. I've never talked to everybody. I've never talked to all the department heads in one room at the same time with the committee. This is the first county to be smart enough to do this, because normally it's just the commissioners and that's it. And then maybe the sheriff will show up and maybe other department head. But now commissioners have invested you, it seems like you're already invested, so very, very, good way to do this. It's the first time I've done this, it's kind of nerve-wracking.
Well, I mean, we might have the authority to do, but we wouldn't go right to him without at least having this meeting. Is there anybody,
Christian County made me go out and talk to them on my own. He made me go out to each one by one, but never together. So they made me do homework.
is there any negatives here about us doing this? Anybody?
So you mentioned that CVS and Walgreens are two of the pharmacies that are being included in this, correct?
Yes.
So we have a CVS here in town. So is there any limitation from whenever, if they were to pull records from CVS and they would see particular physicians being prescribers, is there any protection from trickling down to those physicians at any point? You kind of alluded to it earlier.
The pain bill, yeah.
The pain bill, yeah.
Yes. From our standpoint, strategically, it's not wise for us to go after the doctors because, again, they were misled. They don't think a pain mill doctor is misled. He knows exactly what he's doing. What's going to happen here? Two things are going to happen. Once we file the lawsuit, we're going to get two pieces of information. The ARCOS data, which is the data collection by the federal government, we will know to the pill how many opioids were sent to this county by every defendant that we've sued. We will know to the pill by the day to those CVS and Walgreens in this county. Second, the defendants then will have to reveal to us how much they have sent to St. Genevieve County at some point in the lawsuit. They keep their own records. And we're having some interesting discussions now with one of the defendants where they're saying, you know what, we didn't really do that high enough volume. We really shouldn't be included in that. And we're saying, okay, well, give us your data for the counties. How much of your product is getting in the county? And we haven't heard from them since. Because that's where the devil is in those details there. Because what you're going to see is the number is going to be so high that it's not going to be normal. So that's why we've gone after the pharmacists.
How do you break that down to the level with St. Genevieve County? We have population bases that are going to neighboring counties for some of their healthcare needs, some of their prescription filling. We've only got one of the two pharmacies you mentioned, and they're fairly new to the community. Before that, it was smaller, local pharmacies before, I guess is how we would describe them. So how are you going to be able to pull those numbers, and how many of those numbers are we going to be able to descend those from if they went to Festus or Farmington or Perryville for their prescription fills, because that's where they shop at their local Walmart or local whatever retail stores they shop, and they pick up their scripts at that location. How many of those are coming back into the county, and how would you ever disseminate how they are coming back into the county? Because we have neighboring counties that have far more retail than we do, especially in the pharmacy world. So how would you be able to get that number for a true number for St. John County?
Number one, it doesn't matter because the theory is the diversionary theory. Well, that means that they flooded the county with so many opioids that it created an illegal diversionary market. It was the drugs were diverted from their legal purpose to an illegal purpose. That if I got prescribed 90, I took 10 and would sell the other 80 here in St. Genevieve County. So they created this abundance of the drugs in the county, no matter where they came from.
Okay.
But number two, though, under the state is keeping track of your prescription rate anyway, no matter whatever. Plus your emergency room visits, and they're keeping the emergency room visits for overdoses by residents of your county. So if I'm a St. Genevieve County resident and I'm going to Jefferson County on an overdose, the number is coming back to St. Genevieve County.
Okay.
And that's important. Your deaths, 2 years ago, the deaths in St. Genevieve County were like at 0 or 1 for overdoses. You're up to, in the last 2 years, you've gone up to 10. And you're part of a trend that's coming down 55, that your emergency room visits are also increasing. If you look at the state's stats,
That's
statistics.
some good information, I'll take that right now. The public needs to know that, and that's the problem we had, because nobody realizes and understands and knows. Because of HIPAA laws and everything else, and I wanna,
Let's
we
talk
got,
about-
we can't protect, if we're gonna protect these folks down here, we gotta know something.
Let's talk about HIPAA. None of these are gonna get into medical records of the residents of St. Genevieve County. There's not gonna be any waiver or authorization to get into personal, what we're working off is numbers. That's what we're looking at. So when we request, the state is keeping track of your numbers. What I have seen is Barton County, or counties that border another state, they have a high prescription rate but a low death rate because people are coming in from other states, getting their prescription filled and then going back over to their other state. You don't really see that here because your death rate is up for a county this size.
Well, and I like to say, my whole point, I don't want to nail anybody to the cross over this, but we have to accept responsibility on all of our parts. And every one of us plays a part of this. We have things to do. So, and if we can't fix a problem that we will not say is there. We won't even start. In recovery, we call that denial. Denying there's a problem. This man here knows there's a problem. He knows it's out there. It's a problem. So we can't bury our heads in the sand. We got to try to fight it. We've been fighting it. And we just got to get the help we need to do that. And like I say, I'm for it. I want to slow them down because that's the problem there. It's pain management. I get pain, and I know this man here's got a lot of pain in his back and needs pain medication, but there's things out there that don't have to addict him or somebody else. And I've heard too many stories of people taking pain medication and becoming addicted, and then it just escalates and it ruins lives. And I have zero tolerance.
Anybody else? Jack, thank you for coming down.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you for coming over from St. Francis County. Wayne, appreciate it.
Want us to take off? I can stick around and answer any questions.
Anybody wants to ask questions one-on-one, they can stick around.